He awakens, he rages, he sins, he dies. Revive, revive. He awakens, he rages, he sins, he dies. Revive, revive. He awakens, he rages, he sins, he dies. Revive, revive. The wheel turns, the cycle is not broken, the lesson is still not learned. Revive, revive. Labyrinth of the Demon King is a crossbreed of two different gaming genres, survival horror and dungeon crawling. And it just has something to it, something that feels forbidden yet enthralling, something grotesque and abyssal. I do not mean grotesque as an insult, nor do I mean abyssal to imply that the game is unfathomably long. In fact, I finished it in just 9 short hours, but there is something to be said about the depth of its world and the abyssal feeling of it all. I enjoy how it plays, and I absolutely adore how it looks. The feudal Japanese aesthetic mixed with body horror and lo-fi grime feels like it was lovingly plucked from someone's own dark, niche interests which I share. It is ugly, yet beautiful. You can't help but look at its amalgam of fleshy parts to make a greater, grotesque whole. It is the thrill that you get from when you were a child exploring an abandoned house, or staying up late at night to watch a terrifying horror movie. It feels dirty and scary, but ultimately exciting, like discovering a secret world that you never knew was there because it was hidden beneath a veneer of paint and makeup. The world and story of Labyrinth of the Demon King is purposefully vague. You've heard that before for other games, surely, but when it's done well, it gives that dirty excitement an even keener focus. Rather than being a kid doing something banned by parents, you're now an adult, paging through an esoteric tome laden with complex symbolism, controversial ideas, and frightening surrealism. You read it for the history. You read it because it is Apocrypha, and it's supposed to lead to some form of hidden truth that just always seems beyond reach. Maybe it was literally banned at one point in history by not just parents, but the law. As you play this game, every NPC, every written word, every new enemy and boss feels like another page in that tome. We'll get into spoilers later, but for now I'll just say that the majority of the story has many different fan interpretations. And here's the exciting part. None of them are confirmed. You have to flip through the pages of this tome yourself and make your own interpretations. They won't be laid out for you. I know for some people that can be infuriating. They want a clear-cut story where things are neatly answered and resolved by the end. And certainly I want that sometimes too. But if we wanted that in this case, then we wouldn't be going through this specific secret tome, would we? No. We'd be looking at something that is more straightforward. A book of science, a book of well-known fairy tales. I want to flip through these pages and find those secrets. Find some degree of understanding only to have it torn away from me by the next revelation and go back to searching. This is how some people have made entire careers off of just interpreting FromSoftware games, or frankly how people have made a career from interpreting real-life esoterica in religious texts. The want is somewhere within most of us. We always want to be searching for something. This is the feeling that both survival horror games and dungeon crawlers should emulate. We should want to go down every hallway and into every room for more knowledge. We should be excited at every note read, at every new item picked up, and at every new piece of dialogue spoken. We should also be terrified at new combat encounters, not fully grasping what the enemy is or how to take them on. The thrill should be in constant discovery and improvement, yet always with a goalpost that is beyond reach. A mountain peak that, no matter how much you climb, the rocks get more and more jagged. And just when you reach what you thought was the peak, you find it was just another shelf on the mountainside, and the peak is still ever above you. Labyrinth of the Demon King gives this feeling to me, especially in the game's world, story, and aesthetics. The aesthetics of the game are probably why the majority of people will first be interested in it. It is a looker with fantastic art direction all around. Everything has a feeling of grime stuck on it. Every surface is caked in rust, dust, dirt, and blood. You look at the walls and can almost breathe in the mold you see. When you see in the environment masses of pulsating flesh, you feel disgusted due to that primal feeling of knowing what you're seeing is just wrong. I love this recent wave of games that adopt earlier graphical styles. I touched on this before in other videos, but I'll just repeat my opinion now. I will take limited but stylized graphics over graphical realism any day of the week. The style here is just ideal to me. The core of a feudal Japanese setting with tatami mats, torii gates, katanas, and Buddhist shrines mixed with this otherworldly body horror and genuine feeling of exploring decrepit environments is just so good. Graphical stylization like this can get across tone and theme instantly, and while more realistic graphics can also do this, I want fantasy. I want something I can't get from anywhere else. I want to go to a world that exists solely in someone's nightmares. Monsters and NPCs are a highlight. The most common enemy are these undead inhabitants of the castle. There are variations of them throughout the different zones, and they look and sound frightening beyond most other video game zombies I've seen. They're close to the ones in Siren for my top spot. But beyond their basic looks and sounds, their interactions in the game world really sell them. Some will fight amongst themselves, others still will pick up the weapons of those who have died in combat and then quickly use them on one another, or on you. The way they act is frighteningly advanced sometimes. The music and sound design also just elevates everything around it. The sounds the enemies made oftentimes scared me more than actually facing them in combat. And not in a cheap jump scare way, but just in how well they were designed and how unnatural, yet strangely human they sounded. Even small things like the way the NPCs talk have a unique twist to them. Each speak in a sort of nightmarish Animal Crossing way, with garbled nonsense but still identifiable voices that get across personality. The music too is just insanely good, and important story moments have unique tracks that make the scenes all the more memorable. As a final note on the aesthetics of this game, some people mentioned in earlier reviews not having customizable options for things like the film grain and aspect ratio. These options do exist now. I chose to keep the aspect ratio unchanged because 4:3 is my beloved, but I did turn off the film grain because I knew it would make the footage on YouTube even worse. It is worth noting, if you do bring the resolution higher than 4:3, there are apparently some visual glitches, but the option is there. Though, just play with 4:3, you coward. When we start the game, our first sight is of a no stage, a genre of Japanese drama that has been performed since the 1300s. And though it may seem unrelated, it is a fitting first sight for this game, for reasons that we will eventually get into. We start a new game and the no stage suddenly shifts to an angle of the ceiling, our eyes adjusting as a terrible static overtakes everything, and a strange cat-like figure stands over us, its eyes gouged out and a knife in its hand. It laughs to itself with a strange distortion and waves at us. We get up. The cat continues laughing and apologizes. It thought we were dead. You see, it scavenges edible meat from corpses, but since we're still alive, it spared us. Looking at our heads-up display, we can see that we have only 1 HP, and we start a tutorial where we're taught to scavenge items, heal, and perform basic combat, picking up our chrysanthemum blade. I'll be honest and say that this tutorial segment feels a little out of place and unnecessary. Weirdly enough though, after beating the game, this opening made more sense to me, and that's why I've kept it in this story setup. When we finish this tutorial, or simply just leave the door whenever we want, we are treated to the actual opening, a cutscene that brings us to a moody forest path with a torn banner flowing in the wind, and a drumbeat leading us in. The world has entered the latter age of the Dharma. Society is crumbling. War has spread throughout the country. Disease and famine have killed thousands, and demons walk the very earth itself. You are an Ashigaru, a foot soldier in the service of Lord Takeda Nobumitsu. Deceived by a powerful demon, your lord led his army into an ambush. All perished except for you. Against your wishes, your lord sacrificed his life to aid your escape from battle. You have made a vow to track down the demon who betrayed your lord, and end its life. Following the rumors of an entrance to the demon's stronghold, you find yourself standing on a lonely road, deep in some long-forgotten forest. You take what could possibly be your final breaths on this mortal plane, and prepare yourself to enter Labyrinth of the Demon King. I love this simple opening so much, it reminds me of a classic samurai film, Down to the Beating Drum. We are thrown into the forest. In our inventory, the only things of note are our blade, now somehow broken, and a strange colored coin. We explore this initial forest, and while it is safe, it is undeniably eerie. Even the sound design of the crunchy steps on the forest floor immersed me in this world immediately. The music here is also pretty relaxing, but feels like it is promising us something unsettling to come. Eventually we find that our only path is forward. It leads into a cave decorated with many small shrines, the entrance to the Labyrinth. At first there is enough light to see in the cave, but as we go deeper the lighting gets darker and darker. We hear water dripping and the music becomes more sinister. Only the occasional candle in the distance lights our path. We go ever deeper, until eventually we hear sounds. Fleshy, disgusting squelches and a strange rattling breathing followed by a juicy bite and a swallow. We can see at the edge of the path that these sounds are coming from something. But at first the form doesn't make any sense, almost as if it's shapeless. Only as we get closer can we fully comprehend it. We get a cutscene of the creature hanging upside down, with a long body and stretched out limbs holding a corpse still clutching a torch, illuminating this grotesque scene for us. The creature continues ripping bits of flesh off and lowering the pieces deep into its maw. It suddenly swings back. I can't fully tell, but its face appears eyeless, only bearing a mouth. It reminds me a lot of the Pale Man in Pan's Labyrinth. And after seeing us, it retreats somewhere in the cave ceiling above us, the torch falling, and the rest of the body taken with the creature. We warily step forward and take the torch off the ground, staring at the ceiling in fear. Will it bend back down and take us too? The torch luckily has a hotkey to quickly raise it up, so we hurriedly draw the torch and can see around us, no longer having to rely on candles in the distance. But the torch can only illuminate so much. The cavern is massive. At first we try to hug the walls to keep our bearings, but that proves too limiting. So we descend and face the long dark. The cavern feels endless initially, which really disturbed me. I think I realized when I covered the game Fate and Betula how much the idea of a space that is larger than it should be, or seemingly infinite, bothers me. For a long time we can only see a few feet in front of us, but enough to reveal the abyssal size of the cavern. Eventually in the distance we see an outline. Another monster? A person? No. As we approach it, it's just another shrine. But beyond it, a stream runs gently beneath our feet, and a light can be seen, a rope falling down from it, inviting us to leave the dark. As we ascend, the intense music suddenly ends, replaced by silence, aside from the sounds of our hands on the rope. We emerge into the labyrinth of the Demon King. This whole initial area is actually safe, and has relaxing rainfall and music to match. It is the last of the solely beautiful areas that we will see for a while. There isn't any disgusting grime, just the feeling of nature having run its course. It really sells the feeling of it having been a real location, as the touch of humans is still evident in the visible and usable pathways and battlements. But though the exterior is safe, there is one interior that we can enter, and it does show us the promise of things to come. With a large blood trail ominously leading us through the hall, we reach its endpoint, and find no corpse, but instead the journal of a soldier who tried to flee the castle after it descended into madness due to the Demon King. The soldier made it this far only to find the exit boarded up, his rusty katana unable to break the boards. He advises anyone reading this to give up. It's not worth the struggle. After reading, we pry the rusty katana from the wall and take it with us. While leaving, we encounter our first enemy, a strange insectoid creature that bites us once before we kill it in one slash. This actually frightened me the first time I played. Just the sudden surprise of it made me jump. That feeling of safety that the exterior provided fully dissipated. We wandered the courtyard more before spotting a gate ajar, leading deeper into the castle. The castle structure itself is large and imposing. We wander along it until suddenly, I love this moment because last time we got a cutscene like this, it introduced a horrifying monster. But instead, the subject of this cutscene is scared of us, letting out a genuinely frightened gasp. The woman bows and apologizes profusely. She seems surprised that a human is here. We explain that we are here to avenge our lord, and this immediately makes sense to her. She says that there have been many here to fight the Demon King. each for vengeance of some kind. But none have left. She also comments on us just being a lowly Ashigaru and not a samurai, questioning how our lord could have gotten such loyalty from us. We remain conspicuously silent. And then she says, "Oh, I see." When this happened, I interpreted this as our character having possibly been romantically involved with the Lord. The servant mentions lovers coming just beforehand, and the opening does say the Lord died so we could escape. And certainly while the plot could just be that our Lord was one who cared about even the lowliest foot soldier, I think it could be an interesting element if there's a romance there. We ask her for help and she stutters, genuinely terrified, apologizing, saying that she can't help us because if she was found out, she'd be punished. Ultimately though, her goodness takes over, and she decides to give us some information. To enter the Demon King's tower, we must first venture through 3 towers guarded with wardens. Each warden holds what she calls a burden. These burdens, we later learn, are colored coins, much like the one that we already have. When we defeat each warden and have each coin, we can enter the Demon King's tower. I think this is a very simple but good goal for us. Very cliché, but cliché works for a reason. It gives us a mission with a clear endpoint from the get-go. And as we turn to leave, she offers one final piece of advice. She teaches us how to save the game. Various shrines across the map function as both a respawn and save point. They are also where we will get our kind of level up system, being able to offer incense at the shrine to raise our health or stamina slightly. The service design and the design of most NPCs are great. Most bear masks, and for that matter our character does as well, if you look at our inventory. It is interesting how much emotion the servant can evoke in me despite what should be a frightening appearance. Her dialogue of course does a lot of the heavy lifting, due to her nervous but kind nature, but even her design feels less eerie than the others. Her clothing, though dingy as everything else in the game is colorful. Her posture is nervous but polite, and gets across a lot with very little. After a long walk through narrow fortified passages, we find the entrance to the first tower. The Tower of Repetition. Immediately the mood is shifted. The safe, reigning exterior is now ripped from us, and we are left with eerie silence, grimy walls, and darkness. Each tower's name in the game alludes to a specific level of Buddhist hell. This Tower of Repetition is inspired by, fittingly, the first level of hell, known as Sanjava, or the Reviving Hell, in which murderers tear each other apart, filled with unnatural fear and rage. But when they should die, they are instead reborn again, and the cycle is repeated over and over again. He awakens, he rages, he sins, he dies. Revive, revive. We spot a priest beyond a locked door walking away, and when we look at the door we find an inscription, and 4 empty sockets saying that 4 great kings need to sit upon their thrones to unlock the door. At first I thought this may have been the entrance to the Demon King's tower, but no, this is just the way out of the first tower. We will need to find 4 gems throughout this first tower to unlock the way forward. A bloody trail leads us forward. Moving closer we can hear a thudding noise and small glimpses of movement. When we get close enough, a cutscene starts, introducing the first enemy of the game, the zombie-like inhabitants of the Labyrinth, who fight amongst themselves, just like in Sanjava. These cutscenes in general are just excellent. Very Fatal Frame and Silent Hill, with lots of film grain, violent cuts, and unsettling sound design. It instantly gets across what these NPCs, enemies, and bosses are like, and the brutality of some of them astounded me. Even this one, with a stone being slammed to one of the undead's heads. It stuck with me. Despite my talk of fantasy and graphical style, the way these acts of violence and gore appear are almost sickeningly real feeling. The sound the creatures are making, too, just unsettles me. When the victor of the fight notices us, we are brought into our first combat. As I said in the opening, the gameplay of Labyrinth of the Demon King is a union of 2 specific genres. A dungeon crawler, especially in the style of FromSoftware's older catalog like King's Field and Shadow Tower, but also survival horror, along the lines of Fatal Frame, Silent Hill, and Kuon. But it isn't just basic replication of these different game systems one for one. It is done insanely well and feels perfectly in sync with the setting. At first the combat felt super rigid to me, but I grew to love it. Things almost feel as if they were in slow motion at first, since both you and your enemy's movements are long and telegraphed, with occasional violent increases in speed. So the combat becomes a game of timing. Each monster is almost like a puzzle or a rhythm game. Over time you have to learn what to do against each enemy. You have to ask yourself questions like, do you dodge here or trust in your own movement speed to step away? Maybe you tank it and use one of your healing items and then get a hit in. Or should you parry them? Or kick to interrupt them? But oh, what happens when the enemy staggers me instead? These questions appear for every encounter and have to be considered on the fly. The variety of weapons is also quite fantastic. Admittedly though, for my playthrough I mostly stuck to a couple of weapons that I enjoyed. But because there's so many options, I plan to play around with them on replays. There are katanas, naginatas, daggers, maces, guns, bows, and even more. Frankly, for how short the game is, there's an insane amount of weapons. Some of them are pretty secretive in how they are found. These weapons have different animations, speed, and damage types. You will undoubtedly find your preferred Goldilocks zone eventually. But the game does force switch-ups occasionally. For instance, you may come across a monster that can't be harmed by slashes, and can only be killed by bludgeoning damage. But beyond these actions and weapons, there is also fantastic resource management. Your health and stamina are the two main ones, but also your items. Various consumables exist for health and stamina recovery, and they are limited to a certain number within your inventory. So many games, especially RPGs, you finish with hundreds of items you never use, because what if I need them more around the corner? But because this game's inventory is limited, you will regularly come across many new drops for items, some valuable and rare. So if you haven't used some of these valuable items beforehand, then you can't pick up any more, meaning that they're just sitting there rotting, both on the ground and in your inventory. So it makes you want to use them, so whenever you do find them on the ground, you'll pick them up. When you finally do use them, it makes combat all the more satisfying, and it means you'll be surviving more scenarios than you would be otherwise, leading to exciting moments of tension and release. Being able to pull off more successive hits due to stamina items, or tanking a hit once or twice due to healing. The limited ammo for ranged weapons is also great, because the ranged weapons are easily the most powerful. So as you shoot your arrows and bullets, getting powerful damage off on enemies, it makes you that bit more nervous, because now you're out of that ammo, and you're also out of using a powerful asset for that time. Stamina management also has fun quirks. For instance, when dodging, the first dodge that you pull off is free, as long as you have some stamina, but every dodge afterwards consumes stamina. This encourages you to pull off a first well-timed dodge, as well as making sure that you always reserve at least a couple points of stamina. When sprinting as well, you don't drain stamina, but you also don't recover it. It makes running around during combat useful, yet not overpowered, because eventually you will have to stop or use an item to get stamina. Attacks also drain a lot of stamina, but I wouldn't have it be any other way. That is what influences the action economy of everything else. In combat, there are also just other neat situational quirks. For instance, when kicking. If you look forward, the kick is simple, and kicks straight ahead, staggering an enemy. But if you look down, you stomp. This can be used to hurt fallen enemies, as well as destroy their heads, which is sometimes necessary. The gameplay overall is very satisfying. Once you get over the initial hurdle of how heavy everything feels, it just ends up feeling really good. The game is also one that, while new items and weapons are a massive part of the balance, there's also genuine skill required. I imagine someone could do a broken sword run for most of the game, since dodges and timing are the things that matter the most. After dispatching our first enemy and getting the feeling of combat down, we turned to the undead that had the stone slammed into its head, yanking the stone free and finding that the creature is still breathing, despite its caved-in head and many broken and torn limbs. This stone is revealed to be one of the gems that we need to open the door. On the ground beside the poor wretch is also a map of the first floor. We will need to find maps for each zone, and Flora and I quite like this. It makes you feel genuinely vulnerable when you don't have a map. This first tower is the biggest of the four due to just how many levels there are to it. In this immediate area, there is already two different stairways, one leading up and another down to the basement. But for games like this, I prefer to clear each floor as best I can before moving on. There are also many doors that are jammed or locked, and most of them can be unlocked later on for shortcuts, opening up the area even more. We fight two undead, and though I quickly dispatch the first, I run out of stamina due to my eagerness of getting damage in without focusing on recovery, really limiting my options for the second zombie. And though I defeat it, it is a Pyrrhic victory, since I only have 1 HP remaining. Soon after, two more ambush me in a hallway, and after the enemies block and deliver a quick kick, I have my first death. The screen freezes, the colors invert, and the word death appears. But then, soon after, two more words appear. Revive. Revive. We are not allowed to die. We appear at the shrine where the servant taught us to pray, in perfect health, ready to face death again. After retracing our steps, I took a long look at the map, and realized that really all there is to do is start exploring, and learn what is what. Each room is marked with its purpose, a barracks, a kitchen, a war room, etc. I love this feeling so much, a large open floor with so many things to discover. We first enter several destroyed bedrooms, looting what we can from the shelves. We also find a note, warning us that if an altar to the Buddha falls into disrepair, it will summon a creature, known as an Orbitoke. Its name literally meaning lacquered Buddha, a black, rotting figure resembling the Buddha with dangling eyeballs. It also advises that the lacquered Buddha cannot be killed, but can only be banished by repairing the shrine. This yokai, as well as most within the game, are based after real ones, or, well, they're based after ones that have real-world folklore behind them. Leaving these rooms, we spot one of the undead running in the hallway ahead. This genuinely spooked me when I played, and it also led to another death. Revive. Revive. I will just say in general that I died a handful of times in this first area before getting the hang of combat. At this tower, though, I believe I only died a few times. The game, while difficult, isn't as punishing or unapproachable as others have laid it out to be. And once you get the flow and time of combat down, as well as use the items, the experience becomes not exactly easy, but also not exactly challenging. I actually think this game would be a good entry point for both dungeon crawlers and survival horror. It does both genres in very intuitive, yet approachable ways, while still feeling like there is a lot to them. After returning, we defeat the undead and explore more of the first floor, eventually finding more undead fighting each other. Entering the kitchen, we find an undead bang its head on the door of a pantry. If we speak through the door, a harsh voice speaks back to us. He calls us his buddy, and says that the cat trapped him in here. Is this the same cat as the one we saw in the tutorial? The man also reveals that he's a blacksmith, and will aid us if we free him, saying that the cat has the key to the pantry and has gone upstairs. I love the blacksmith's voice for some reason. It has a great characterization to it, and though he says no actual words audibly, I can imagine him saying, buddy, as he often does in the written dialogue. Before moving upstairs, we explore more of the area, finding the dining room with tables below for the basic household and chairs above for the Lord and his advisors. I tried to climb higher up to get to where the Lord's seating was, but couldn't reach it. Here, I also cheese the enemy a bit by jumping on the table, where they can't reach me. Listen, in games like this you gotta use every tool available to you. In here, we also find a chest covered in a strange, fleshy fungus, reminiscent of a slug. Exploring the area more, we find the barracks, as well as a note from one of the soldiers talking about the castle's madness, and about the invasive fungus now covering an entire hallway, which is still there in the present, blocking our path forward. The note continues, though, to say that the salt could destroy it, but the only salt in the castle is locked away in the pantry, the exact one our blacksmith friend is currently in. Finally, with our way forward down here blocked off, we ascend the stairs to the second floor. Here we find more locked doors and basic enemies before finding the cat in a room, sawing off the flesh of captured undead, still moving. This cutscene is really gruesome and made me cringe the first time. Limbs being cut off like this has always bothered me a lot. In general, I'm a body horror fan, it just affects me more than other types of horror. The cat, though, with the sweet voice, just kindly greets us, its victim still writhing on the floor. Hello, traveler. Another here to slay the Demon King, I presume? I welcome you to the Labyrinth, traveler. It then invites us to its tea house and says it also sells wares. It is strange that it doesn't seem to recognize us, since we had seen it in the tutorial, but be fair, it does seem to have lost its eyes. We ask it for the key, and it explains that it trapped the Kappa there on purpose, saying that his flesh will make tasty ramen. So our blacksmith friend is a Kappa, a very common yokai in Japanese folklore. They tend to be aquatic and small, though still powerful, and they're kind of disgusting, with 3 anuses and eating and assaulting people. They also covet Shirikodama, a ball of flesh said to be in a human's anus. This ball is also an item that we will find fairly often throughout the labyrinth. The cat says they're willing to let go of the key for a price. We need to steal the Buddha statue downstairs and give it to the cat. We read a warning about this very thing, but frankly, given the fact the castle has already descended into hell, what is one more yokai added to the pile? We reluctantly agree, giving a final empathetic look to the impaled, butchered, and still breathing undead. We return downstairs and work our way to the shrine. Taking the Buddha statue, an achievement appears in the top right, named, What Could Go Wrong? Well, actually, nothing so far. What does this achievement mean? Foreshadowing his literary device, and handing over the statue to the cat, they happily purr, taking the statue and giving us the key in exchange. We return once more downstairs to free our Kappa blacksmith. Killing some more undead on our way, we reach the door and unlock it. Finally! Thanks for the help, buddy. He tells us that we can bring him weapons and armor to repair, as long as we have some Shirikodama to pay for his work. For now, he's going downstairs since there's a forge there. But soon, once we have the door out of here opened, he'll be going to his wife's tea house? So the cat and the Kappa are married. Okay. Getting into the pantry, we find plenty of useful consumables, as well as a jar of salt. First, we use the salt to melt away the fungus-covered chest, and inside we found a dowel blade. We cannot use the dowel yet, since we need to find a handle to combine with it, but still a worthy reward. We use the salt once more to open up the fungus-covered hallway, unlocking the rest of the first floor. We find a bow here, our first ranged weapon. And in the war room, on a table, we find a key that unlocks more of the second floor, and also a journal from one of the Demon King's men. Discontent with the Demon King's inaction, he mentions that Clan Takata fell a year ago. Our clan. So we've had to have been on this hunt for the Demon King for well over a year, since it would also take some time for this castle to fall. How long has our journey of vengeance been? Is that how our sword broke? But then, how would we have encountered the cat when the sword was whole? It also says the Demon King keeps making changes to the castle, and spends most of his time with a young boy in his chambers. Okay. We remove a bamboo blocker on a door and unlock a shortcut to the first half of the first floor. Continuing on, we enter the hallway, the same one with the altar to the Buddha at the end of it, and the lacquered Buddha has been summoned fully. Despite what the note told me, I tried to fight it for a while, but I accomplished nothing aside from stunning it occasionally. From now on, it will appear and pursue us throughout the zone randomly, hitting us if we get close enough. I like the fear that he adds to the game, but I will admit sometimes it was annoying when entering a new zone, since I wanted to explore and not just have to run past everything. Being chased in horror games tends to not scare me that much, even if it does add some tension during combat. Overall, though, I do like its inclusion and I wouldn't remove it, and its visual design is just so good and terrifying, probably the most iconic monster design in the game, in my opinion. Being around the lacquered Buddha also raises our corruption level. Corruption and poison have meters, and if they hit 100, we die. There are items that we can get to lower these numbers, but also being away from their sources make the number go down. Fleeing the Buddha upstairs, we use our new key to unlock more of the second floor, and find at the end of the hallway a strange sight. A room with a grated off hole in the center, and around it are many still moving people in bags standing on pedestals, ropes tied around them in their necks. A plaque beside them reads out a story that also functions as a riddle, called The King's Court. It tells the story of a young boy with mutilated eyes and a missing tongue, standing before a king who's passing judgment over the boy, as well as those who may or may not have been involved with his butchering. The mother speaks first, and she proclaims her innocence, and blames a drunk farmer. Then the farmer says he did not mutilate the boy, but he had entered the house, possibly to steal something since times are hard. But he found the boy already mutilated, and with a noble in bed. The noble, who calls the king father, admits he loved the boy, but that the mother, after being paid, was the one who mutilated him to subdue him. The boy cannot speak. The king, disgusted by the whole story, hangs them all. Honestly, not sure what the boy did. Maybe the king views the boy somehow having seduced his son, which is fucked up, but regardless, the solution to the riddle is to turn each of the bodies in the order they speak in the story, each body bearing a mask resembling a character. The only real mix-up is that occasionally the mother is referred to as the crone by the story, which at first I thought was a different character without a pedestal, but both the mother and the crone appear to be the same one, since you turn the same body for them in the puzzle. Once it is done correctly, a rope with one of the gems on it lowers from the grate in the center of the room, going to an area below, and each of the bodies are raised up by the ropes, hung. And yet again I cover a game with hanging in it. I think this is the fourth one? I don't know why this keeps happening. Is the problem me? The story also raises some questions, since in the soldier's note he mentioned that the Demon King spent time with the young boy in his bedroom. Leaving the room and taking another hallway beside it, we actually exit the tower for a brief moment, entering a courtyard. I can imagine the satisfaction of fresh air and a light rain hitting my skin after witnessing all that was inside the building. But we have to enter back into the tower. We find ourselves in a disgusting, muddy area. The rope that was lowered from the king's court with the gym now before us. We grab it, now halfway to leaving the first tower. Here we also find a shortcut opening into the kitchen from a hidden door in a closet. Working our way up, we reach the 3rd floor, and here we get a few new enemies. One called a Fury, a yokai that crawls on the ground, and though it is pretty weak, it can only be killed by bludgeoning. Since we don't currently have a bludgeoning weapon, we have to kill it by stomping on its head. This 3rd floor is easily the most dangerous, and also confusing to navigate, filled with enemies. I found myself lost several times. We also come across the cat again, who helps us by showing a secret passage hidden beyond a scroll in the wall. And beyond, a second new enemy. These little child-sized yokai with a lantern in one hand and a knife in the other that causes bleeding damage. No visible face on them, but a bloodstain. Could they be representative of the abused boy from the puzzle? I also learned here that, funny enough, the cat can get into combat, since I found it fighting one of these child-sized yokai, the cat proving victorious. Moving through the maze of hallways, we find a way to an exterior railing alongside the castle, functioning as an open-air hallway, leading us to the uppermost level. Here we find another chest with fungus covering it. Using our salt, we open it and get the handle for the dowel, combining it and getting a new 2-handed slashing weapon. Ascending further, we find our first boss fight, the Abumi, a yokai of a woman who died around the time of childbirth and is unable to pass on. Her boss fight, and frankly, every boss fight in the game, are pretty easy and outright trivialized if you use a bow like I did. I'd saved my arrows for an opportune moment and decided that this was the moment. The Abumi fell without a single hit on me, though I did reload to see how the fight is with the melee, and it too is fairly easy, but at least this way it lasts longer and you get to see her unique attack animations, one of which she attacks with the baby bundle. Regardless, when she falls, she drops the bundle, crawling to it. In a strange moment, a rat-like creature shows up, grabs the bundle, and runs away. We loot the Abumi, getting a key to an armory as well as a figurative key and its wooden coin to unlock the way to the Demon King. Beyond her to the armory, we also loot a gem to the door downstairs, and a suit of samurai armor. The armor's description says that it looks strangely familiar to us, and the helmet, like our Ashigaru one, bears a mask. A cool detail is, in our first-person view, if we look down, we can actually see the new armor on us visually. Moving back downstairs, we've defeated the warden of the tower, but we are still missing a gem. After being chased by the lacquered Buddha again, we make our way downstairs and into the basement. And yet again, the lacquered Buddha immediately appears to terrorize us, chasing us. From writings, you're able to learn that a maiden was sacrificed down here to strengthen the central pillar of the castle, and with her, we'll find our final gem. The basement is the most straightforward area of the first tower, with a design that isn't as sprawling or confusing as the others. We also find our Kappa blacksmith friend, and he offers us a new service. He can reforge our chrysanthemum blade, but he needs another weapon to use for the material. We could use a rusty blade we picked up before, but he outright tells us that it wouldn't make good material for it and would just be not worth it. This mechanic is very neat actually, since we can reforge the chrysanthemum blade in different ways, giving it different effects depending on what weapon we sacrifice. For now, we'll wait. Eventually in the basement we find lamp physics. Sorry, I don't know why this astounded me so much.
Rendering in real-time true HD. Real-world physics. True dynamic soft shadows.
After the lamp, we find a small platforming area where we need to jump down into a hole, leading us to the maiden's corpse, still in front of the central pillar, clutching our final gem. We take it and return upstairs, finally able to leave this first tower. Since I just wanted to leave, I ran past the enemies and the lacquered Buddha, and as they beat the shit out of me, I slot the gem into the door, and luckily the undead leave as I very heroically run outside and then back inside, resetting the enemies. The area beyond the locked door reveals a nice looking part of the tower, or, well, it would have been nice. There's an interior garden with a tree before us, and just beyond, visible through an interior window, is a strange floating purple skull. This enemy concerned me when I first saw it, thinking it might even be a boss that would turn into something larger. And though they do have ranged attacks, which only a few enemies do, they can be dodged fairly easily and can be killed in just a few hits. Beyond the skull is the way out, but to the side there is also another path to the second floor. We find ourselves on that elevated seating area above the dining room. We push a globe off the balcony, crashing through the floor, and if we decide to venture back through the tower to the dining room, there's now a hole in the floor. We can jump through it to the basement and into a secret room that otherwise would be locked. Inside we find a new weapon, a naginata. I actually really like the naginata's moveset. In general, I just love polearms in games. Well, we unblock the door, return upstairs, and take the doorway out of the first tower. Upon exiting the first tower, we find ourselves inside of a large hallway. A sign directs us to exit on the left to go to a tea house. Another says that if we continue forward, we'll enter a bathhouse, one of the 3 warden towers. The lacquered Buddha spawning in front of us, though, kind of makes the choice obvious, so we take a quick left out into another courtyard. We're officially now in the latter half of the game, and it is more or less freeform now how we want to tackle the rest. Because though we have access to the bathhouse, we also, just across the courtyard, have access to the 3rd tower as well. Though, due to the natural framing of how we come across these areas, the bathhouse makes an obvious first choice. But before that, we have the cat's tea house to go to. It isn't in this courtyard exactly, but what there is instead is a tunnel underneath a pavilion. Crawling through it, we arrive at the tea house, and it is so serene. I love it so much. I am a huge fan of homes and hubs in video games, and in both survival horror and especially dungeon crawlers, they are always a welcome respite. The tea house is so inviting. Gone is most of the grime from the rest of the game. The walls and furniture are actually clean, sometimes completely white without a stain on them. There's a warm fire burning behind the cat's merchant stall, where it neatly has weapons and wares laid out. And outside is a nice garden. Well, mostly nice. Rather than a clean pond, it is muddy, but aside from that, the place is gorgeous. The Kappa Smith works at his forge, and the tea house will eventually get other patrons. When looking up from the garden, we can see that the tunnel must have been huge, because we're now under the cliff where the castle is built on. The thing that really ties all this together, though, is we actually get to perform a tea ceremony. The cat teaches us how to do it, how many scoops of matcha to add, when to add the hot water, and to stir at the end. When we drink it, it completely restores our health, and we pocket 3 uses of the tea. Returning to the tea house, we can freely perform this as many times as we want, but we can never take more than 3 uses of it on the go. This tea functions very similar to an Estus flask, and I love it. Incorporating the process of getting an Estus into the actual gameplay is genius. And the tea making itself slows down the game in a good way. It allows you to breathe, doing a mundane and relaxing task. You can imagine your character breathing out heavily, savoring the warm drink, and just letting his mind clear for a moment. We buy a royal katana from the cat merchant and go over to the Kappa, asking the smith to use the royal blade to reforge our own. He agrees, and now that we have it reforged, it has really good damage, as well as reach. If we wanted to, though, we could have waited even longer, and given him other weapons to give unique effects like bleeding, but I just wanted a basic high damage output. We also used some of the Shirikodama to improve the katana even more. For a complaint, though, we can also improve our armor, but the game never tells you if the armor set you get is an improvement, nor what improving them further at the forge actually does. Refreshed, or as the game would say, refreshed, we climb back out of the tunnel and back into hell. We enter the bathhouse, or as it is called by the game, the Tower of Lamentation, named after the Buddhist hell Hahava, a hell where the damned suffer from cold winds. This hell doesn't fit the tower as well as the others do in my opinion, but I still like the tower itself as a level. In the waiting room we find a map for the first floor, and this map is unique, in the sense that every bathroom has a unique color assigned to it, and this is the key to the main puzzle of this area. We will have to find and repair colored wheels that control the water in the bathhouse, each color of the wheel corresponding to these colored rooms. And when that colored wheel is turned, the water is drained, but only for that room, the others remaining filled and resetting every time a new wheel is turned. The bathhouse is mostly filled with the undead we've been facing, as well as a new crawling yokai called the Akaname, literally meaning filth flicker. They're pretty weak enemies, but due to their disgusting licking, their mouths inflict poison on us. Lacquered Buddha, our longtime friend, also makes an appearance, chasing us throughout the area. We find the water control room, and inside is one of the wheels, and a note, saying that locked behind a door here is a yokai, known as a Nupeppo, a repulsive yokai that resembles a pile of flesh and inhabits grimy areas. This Nupeppo is the warden of this tower, inhabiting the filth that has built up in it. We replace the wheel and turn it, draining the yellow pools of water. We ascend to the second floor and find another new yokai, these hunchbacked rat creatures with knives, the same kind we had seen grab the baby bundle. I was able to get a sick double decapitation on them. This upper floor contains a humongous bath, the flesh fungus above it dripping into the pool filled with disgusting slop? I don't know, slop's the only word I can think of, I'm sorry.
Plop.
While up here, we can also hear the sound of someone crying out for help. In Find Like the Pantry in the Kappa, there is a door with someone beyond it, and a creature trying to break it down. Dispatching it and speaking beyond the door, we find the servant. She thanks us for saving her and says that she has decided to help us. She gives us a wheel and some advice on how to get to the Nupeppo, by draining the big tub that we saw earlier. She also gives us a special talisman that can be used an infinite number of times to teleport us to the tea house. I haven't touched on talismans much until now because frankly I didn't use them much. They allow you to cast spells that can do things like minor healing or shooting a magical projectile, and their inclusion does add some good variety, but I found their niches were mostly covered by other items. We explore the bathhouse more, and as much as I like to give a recounting of exploring the bathhouse, it is just a lot of twisting the wheels over and over again, and then going to corresponding rooms, finding more notes and wheels, and so on. I do want to issue a little complaint here though. I really had trouble telling the colors apart on the wheels once they were added. The game does have a fairly dour color palette, and once the wheels are put into place, you can kind of see the colors on them, but for the life of me I couldn't tell them apart at all towards the end. While exploring, we find notes along the way from bathhouse workers, advising us on which colors to progress. We also find a set of formal robes in the bathhouse, the inventory again saying that they feel like we've worn them before. And yet again, the headpiece is a mask. We also find a note that tells us of a secret weapon hidden in a tree stump behind the pavilion, and sure enough when we go there, we find it. And since we're right here by the tea house, we should check on the servant. She thanks us again for saving her, and provides us with a new service. When we drain the pools, we can find muddy weapons, and return them to her, but only one can we choose to be able to use. We ask her to tell us more about herself. She says that she hopes that we can kill the Demon King, and even if we fail, she can't be here anymore. We would rather face whatever comes from our failure than continue on. She explains that the Demon King has a taste for the flesh of young women, and that he took her, as well as every young woman of her home village, in a raid. They became slaves until he hungered, then he would eat them alive with his guests. But when her time came, and he tried a piece of her flesh off of her back, she apparently tasted different, and he couldn't finish eating her, so he spared her, kept her as a servant. She says that she's been here for an eternity, and when she tries to leave, she just wakes up back here. And if we look behind her, we can see a bloody strip on her back, presumably where the Demon King had tore the flesh from her. With her story finished, we leave her. Finally, after exploring the bathhouse fully, we get the wheel that can drain the Great Bath, and we descend from it into the disgusting Nupeppo's lair. The Nupeppo boss fight is interesting, and is probably the hardest fight in the game, at least for me it was, since it did kill me once. The Nupeppo gives off poison if you get close enough, which can kill you real quick if you get to that 100 threshold, which happened to me the first go around. Revive. Revive. It also constantly spawns more of the little insects, which also bite and raise your poison level. The Nupeppo is slow though, and with enough ducking and moving back in while managing our poison levels, we kill it. From its innards, we take its wooden coin, and now have only one warden remaining. Beyond the boss fight room, we get a new weapon, a kanabo, a big maul that does pretty good blunt damage. And we will need it in the next tower. We enter the final Warden Tower, named the Tower of Crushing Assembly, named after Samgara, the crushing hell. People are, as the name implies, crushed between rocks and metal, constantly being revived. Here, though, a more insidious torture also occurs. The sufferer sees a person atop a tree, sometimes a loved one, other times just a beautiful person, beckoning them. The sufferer feels compelled to climb the tree, and is cut with the razor-sharp leaves until they reach the top, and find the person is gone, and instead now at the bottom, beckoning them down. They climb down, being cut, to only find the person atop the tree again. This process continues for thousands of years. The Hell of Crushing here is symbolized by the holding cells, the prison of the Demon King's castle. Exploring this area are countless cells, and winding passages leading through them. Who knows how many people were kept here under lock and key? It must have been an insane amount, since the tower itself is massive, and from writings we learn that many of them are innocents, some even holy men. The main enemy of this floor is skeleton yokai, known as Gaikatsu, presumably the many people who died in these cells. These Gaikatsu cannot be harmed by slashing weapons, so instead, we use our new weapon, the Kanabo. This weapon also proves to me that the bath is probably the preferred first area, since having the Kanabo ready for the second area makes it a lot more manageable than it would be otherwise. Much like the bathhouse, it is a little hard to give a play-by-play of exploring this tower, since it is mostly snake-like passages going along countless cells. I couldn't recount the way I went because, well, frankly I was mostly running, due to the insane amount of Gaikatsu. Once a mass amount of them leading to my death as they cornered me. Revive. Revive. On the first floor we enter a large central room, and within it, this. Tsuchigomo, a giant spider yokai. As it spits at us, we continually run around the room, going around corners, ducking behind its own cocooned prey, only occasionally ducking back in with a powered katana swing, eventually felling the creature. But what is this? This isn't the warden of the tower? No coin is found. But there is a cocoon that is still moving. We cut it down and the priest we had seen all those hours ago climbs out. He thanks us for freeing him, but says, normally, he would have been able to kill the thing itself. The priest, though very sure of himself, seems constantly confused, forgetting what he was saying mid-sentence, and saying the Demon King's magic keeps him befuddled and lost. He doesn't let it stop him, though, and humorously, the overconfident priest assesses us, and says he thinks, with his guidance, our quest can be successful. He tells us the actual warden of this tower is the jailer. Before the castle became this, he was once the prison keeper, but has since been twisted into a creature. I really like this, and I would have liked to see the other towers have corrupted denizens of the castle also be the wardens. Finally, the priest gives us some of his talismans as a thank you, and moves into the tea house. Speaking with him there, he now functions as a talisman merchant. You can ask him about himself, but unlike the servant, he doesn't have many answers. He says he can't fully remember who he was, other than he thinks he was probably a priest. Returning to the tower, we can see an interesting sight just beyond the bars. It is so intimidating seeing the warden through the bars walking away. This reminds me a lot of being able to see Pyramid Head through the bars in Silent Hill 2. On the upper floors of the prison, we come across undead priests, as well as more of the skeletons and floating skulls. And of course, our friend the lacquered Buddha. While exploring, we find some of the rat yokai around a shrine with a Buddha statue. Whoa, wait. Is that what was happening earlier? Was the bundle the mother yokai had the Buddha statue? It had to have been, since we saw the rat take it, and now here there are rats around the Buddha. But how did it get there then? Did the cat give it to her? To the Ibumi? Why? Regardless, we won't look a gift horse in the mouth. We take the Buddha statue and run all the way back to the first tower, returning the Buddha statue, becoming finally free of the lacquered Buddha. Wait, is it? Revive. Returning the statue does prevent him from spawning later on, but it seems like he wanted to get one final fuck you in. This tower's puzzle involves having to find a rope and hook to combine to reach down a pit to get a key, then using the key to loot a ritual hammer, and then using the hammer to ring 4 prayer bells throughout the tower. Much like the first floor here, a lot of the time is going to be spent just running past tons of enemies, or several very powerful ones. The tower is fittingly overwhelming feeling, and, well, crushing. Once all 4 prayer bells are rung, which the prison warden would do in life to torture the prisoners, it summons him. The warden appears with a spear and a sack, presumably containing many of the people that he had executed. He summons skeletons from them continually. We use our gun shooting at him and his minions, and finish him off with our katana. On his corpse is the final coin that we need. This is it. The moment that our vengeance can be actualized. But we must be wary and prepare. We return to the tea house, upgrading our sword and our armor, brewing one final cup of tea, and then we ascend to the final part of the Labyrinth of the Demon King. We enter a tower connected to the courtyard and the prison. Inside a simple pedestal with slots for the 4 coins. We put them in their places. The one that we have carried with us from the beginning, and the 3 that we have taken through blood and pain. When they're all in their place, it lights a small fire on the pedestal, and the wall opens up, revealing a door. We enter the final tower, the Tower of No Interval, named after Vici, the uninterrupted hell, the deepest of Buddhist hells reserved for the greatest sinners. The punishment here is too advanced for me to detail in its entirety. Opening before us is a great stairwell that seems to ascend forever. Accompanying our ascent is this absolutely insane music track that just continually builds and builds. All that we are left with is this feeling of our heart rate rising to the music, our anger building, remembering all we have been through, and visualizing the vengeance that we will have upon this terrible demon king. This moment is one of the most memorable ones I've had in a game in a long time. I almost didn't want it to end. I purposely began walking up the stairs at points to keep it playing. Though I think the game is smartly designed so that the song will only end once you finish your ascent. Because the moment I passed through the door, the building tension finally released, leaving me with nothing but silence and the expectation of a final confrontation. On a table are some final few items. Incense for final stat increase, bullets, and a scroll describing one of the hells. In fact, it describes the first hell and the first tower that we ventured through, the Hell of Repetition. At first, the description goes over what we already know. That is about the rage-fueled inhabitants tearing each other apart. But there is an important addition towards the bottom. After describing the torture the inhabitants of this hell will suffer, it says, "A cold wind will blow through the realm, while a voice from the sky cries out, 'Revive, revive,' and the sinners will be restored to their former shape, to begin the torture again." This description is like a slap in the face. It gave me chills when I first read it. It's been looking at us in the face this whole time, and perhaps it should have been obvious. The towers aren't just symbolic of hells. We are in hell. We pray at a shrine one more time, offering incense and praying for forgiveness for whatever we did to be here, and we climb the stairs, reaching the heart of the Labyrinth of the Demon King. He awaits in an impossibly larger room that appears like a void, containing a nose stage, just like the one we had seen all the way back when we began. And standing on it, the Demon King himself. He seems surprised that we have made it, saying that once many did, but now, in the current age, it is rare. He asks what we will do now that we've made it to him. You still carry that blade, the other half still embedded in your master. Do you hope to cut me down at a second time? Or do you wish to submit and offer your body to me? No, you seek violence. I can see it in your eyes. Well, I think we've spoken enough. Let us begin. The fight starts and the king immediately raises his staff, hitting us with a magical projectile. The intense music from the stairs returns, and with it, our rage. He summons skulls too, more projectiles being thrown at us. We run around trying to get out of his range, and in the darkness of the void, around the stage, it is almost hard to spot him, fading into the darkness. In this final fight, we use our talismans, shooting magic back at him, our bow shooting arrows, and many consumables. Finally, our blade that we've carried with us this whole time, finishing the job. We awaken in a cavern, a torch in front of us, but what happened? The mask came alive and took us? It certainly jumped on us, but we're here. Did we win? And what do you mean about our blade still being within him and him being our lord? We walk into the stream. It flows in the direction of light, natural light, the outside. We run as fast as we can in the water, towards the light, towards freedom, the light surrounding us, and then... we made it. We did it, the sun is shining, the birds are singing, but something isn't right. We are right back to where we began. The cycle is not broken, the lesson is still not learned. Revive. Revive. So, remember how I said nothing in the story is confirmed? This is kind of what I meant. We've gotten a lot more information now, and I'm going to lay down my thoughts on the story, but I'll admit that there are gaps, and I'm okay with that. And I hope and am frankly sure that others have those gaps filled in with their own theories. First, we are certainly in hell. I believe specifically Sanjava, the hell of repetition, due to the final scroll and the presence of revive, revive throughout the game. The No stage tells us from the beginning that this is essentially a drama to be played out to punish us. Everyone, including us, wears masks like they do in a No play. And even the enemies tend to lack distinct faces, as if they were wearing masks too. This casts us and them as actors in this play, a divine play that exists just to punish. I think that a lot of what we were told beginning of the story is fake. It is a role in the play being given to us. And due to the opening similarity to samurai films, I could even say that it is intentional. The static that we hear, the film grain, the passing text, it's almost like these elements are actually in-universe. Our character themselves are reading it, or at least thinking it. The enemies are introduced with a pre-made telegraphed film scene, and our character's backstory is as simple and hollow as the opening crawl of a film. Think about whenever the servant asked us why we are so loyal to our lord and we couldn't answer. I filled in that answer myself, but I think that our character didn't even know. I have two different ideas for who our character is that I want to put forward. The first is that our character was a warden of the Demon King. He grew tired of his lord's evil and struck him down. Starting with the coin backs this up, since if we were a warden, we would have one of those coins already. The samurai armor and formal clothing looking familiar to us is also evidence towards this, since if we were a warden, we would have been higher up socially. And finally, half of our blade still being the Demon King implies it could have been when we first killed him in life, and that him and our lord is one and the same. And even if the Demon King was evil, it was still a great and violent betrayal to sentence our character to hell. Or maybe even our character was sentenced to hell due to serving the Demon King for so long without doing anything. Something I also want to bring up is the similarities to the Demon King in the game and the historical warlord Oda Nobunaga. In pop culture, Nobunaga is often called the Demon King. Famously also, Nobunaga was betrayed by one of his retainers, Akechi Mitsuhide, could be taking on this person's role. A few other things also line up. In real life, Nobunaga defeated the Takada clan, the same one mentioned at the beginning of the game as having been destroyed by the Demon King. I also have a theory about the boy that the Demon King is mentioned to be with. Maybe he was inspired by the real figure Mori Ranmaru, who died only aged 16 to 17, and is believed in pop culture and by some historians to have been in a relationship with Nobunaga. And not only that, Ranmaru was also awarded a castle owned by the Takada clan after its fall. Aside from this theory, though, I also want to put forward the idea that the Demon King isn't actually representative of the ruler of the castle in real life, and is instead a divine figure who exists only to punish. And also that our character's backstory isn't actually defined in the game at all. Instead, we just play as a sinner, forced to take on different roles in their own personal hell. Remember how in this tutorial we have a complete blade? If the blade broke off into the Demon King when he was alive, how was it full then? Some may say that this scene is just simply non-canon, but I think what we're witnessing in the tutorial is another cycle of our character's hell. This is why in the main game the cat doesn't recognize us, why our sword is broken, and also why we only have 1 HP in the scene. We had just died, revived, and seen the cat. It is also possible that this was our first cycle, and the blade being embedded in the Demon King is a reference to the previous run through the tower. Perhaps the main game is our second time through. Demon King does say we have cut him down before, but then again, maybe this is the 500th time. Servant mentions that many have come here for vengeance, each having different purposes. These could just be other tortured souls, but what if, like we were a no performer on stage, we enter the labyrinth every time a different person, each bearing a different mask of a different character, a different opening crawl, a different backstory. For the main game cycle, we play the Ashigaru foot soldier, avenging his fallen lord. But before that, maybe we play the samurai seeking vengeance for his fallen clan, and before that maybe the nobleman seeking vengeance for his murdered lover. The samurai armor and noble clothing looking familiar to us because we'd assumed those roles previously, and maybe we aren't the only ones shuffled around to different roles. The priest seems to have been here for a long time as well. He even says he only thinks he was a priest, not able to remember anything else about himself. Maybe he was never a priest in real life, and that is instead the role that he was given for this run-through of the labyrinth. The Takada clan also fell a long time ago, and this castle too, who knows how many years have passed, or even if years do pass. The only constant is that there is always a play to be performed. There's always someone or something to be avenged, deaths to be had, and a Demon King to be felled. And we are the lead every time. And also, notice how the Demon King asks if we would willingly give our body to him. He also says that he knows that we won't because he can feel the rage within us. This could just be him telling us to give up since we can't win, general evil guy bluster, but what if this is truly the way to pass from this hell, to let go of our rage? The hell of repetition is often home to murderers and other violent sinners, and until we can let go of that rage, it will continue. He awakens, he rages, he sins, he dies. In the very final scene we appear in a cavern, and just like the first cavern, with its light that leads us up the rope into the labyrinth, we have a light at the end of this cavern that leads us also right back into the labyrinth. We think we're free. We hear the birds chirping, see the sun above us, the trees flowing, but then the birds are frightened by something. And what do we see immediately after? The no stage and an option to start a new game. The cycle is not broken. The lesson is still not learned. We are forced to play through it again and again and again. The only bright side I can give you is that Buddhist hell is not an eternity, though it is often thousands, millions, or even billions of years long. So one day, we will be free of it. But not today. Revive. Revive.